Here we are picking it up again at part 6 on page 605, and we're just coming right down the page here, and we're looking at gonadotropins. And I've indicated to you that FSH and LH play a role in the gonads ultimately, and in the production of both gametes, which would be the sperm and the egg, spermatozoa or the ova, and then that would be the responsibility, of course, of the follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone actually has more to do with the cells in the gonad that are producing steroid hormones. So in the female, that would be progesterone and estrogen, two slightly different tissues doing each. There's going to be thecal cells in the ovary that are producing progesterone, and the granulosa cells that are producing estrogen, all under the influence of LH. And in the male, there's going to be interstitial cells, also known as Leydig cells, L-E-Y-D-I-G, Leydig cells, that produce testosterone. Okay, so they travel together and stimulate the gonads so that we get both the gametes and the steroid hormones. Okay, and then we're going to be taking a look here at prolactin. Prolactin is unique in that it is a little bit different from oxytocin. It actually causes the development of tissues in the mammary gland, in the breast tissue, so that you get synthesis of milk. Okay, so the actual alveolar cells within the mammary are stimulated. Ultimately, it's oxytocin then that causes the myoepithelial cells. There's epithelial cells that take on a muscular contractibility cell, so to speak, that are activated by oxytocin. So don't confuse that contraction and milk letdown with the production of milk under the influence of prolactin. Okay, so prolactin actually requires the synergy and the permissiveness of estrogen. No estrogen, then no milk. Okay, so in a pregnancy, the levels of estrogen and progesterone actually skyrocket compared to normal daily life in the monthly cycle. There are higher and lower levels during the cycle, but in pregnancy there's a vast increase in estrogen and progesterone, and enough so to make receptors for the prolactin and cause the prolactin to work effectively. Okay, so the moving on then to, I had mentioned to you before that within the thyroid gland we do have these extra cells. They're called parafollicular. They're outside of the follicle forming cells. These follicle forming cells that are actually producing the thyroxine are a nice simple cuboidal epithelium, and these are interesting cells right here because they don't take on a stain. Do you notice? Sometimes they're referred to as clear cells or abbreviated C cells. So and what they're producing also has a C letter as an acronym, sort of the initials of the type of molecule, calcitonin. Calcitonin actually has a lot to do with calcium, and it's permissive in the human body. It's not actually stimulatory, but more or less permissive in the uptake of calcium from the diet and stored into the bone matrix. We require so much calcium for so many things that we actually build our home out of calcium. One could say it's like a gingerbread house. You've actually created the structure made out of the nutrient that you need most of all, and that would be calcium. We need calcium ion to initiate a muscle twitch, and we need calcium ion to cross the membrane so that neurotransmitters can be released to synapses. Without these activities on the part of calcium ions, you can have no twitch, no muscle function. You can have no neurotransmitter release and hence no neural function. So calcium plays this sort of larger than normal role compared to other nutrients. So we need a lot of it, and we build our bone matrix from that. And so this is permissive in the uptake and the building of bone matrix. And then we get to the other side of the equation, which would be the release of that. I'll get to that momentarily over here, and then we'll return to the work with thyroxine. So here on the back of the thyroid gland are these little two sort of like nubbins right there that are going to be producing the parathyroid hormone. And you can see here that in this condition of the blood in which there is low calcium, we're going to release parathyroid hormone. And three things result. One is that we activate, and this is an activation, and it has real life results. It increases osteoclast activity. That's the opposite of an osteoblast, which lays down matrix. Osteoclasts help with the remodeling of the bone by taking up, metabolizing the matrix. They are like macrophages in that regard. Okay, and so then we're going to release calcium from the bone matrix to the blood, and then we can do things with it. We can function in our muscular, in our also neural system. We're going to be able to stimulate the retention of calcium so that it doesn't spill into the filtrate and ultimately then the urine. So we're going to retain calcium at the kidney level. And then we're also going to activate vitamin D at the kidney level with parathyroid hormone. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone coming from the skin, stimulated by sunlight. It requires that we activate it at that level. It comes down here. Vitamin D plays a role in transitation of calcium from the diet across the membrane so that we can get calcium up from the food. And it requires this activation to make the membranes permeable and the uptake possible of calcium. So that's pretty important. Sunlight plays a huge role as a result in the uptake of calcium and in the formation of the skeleton. So now we're back to the thyroid gland, and I just want to make a quick notation here in the text that there are many activities that are required. They talk here about the synthesis first, but location, structure, thyroid hormone, and function is right here, and we're looking at page 607. And we have activities here: increasing basal metabolic rate. This is from early life. Heat production. These are things that change with the weather and with the seasons. If we get a hot spell, we can acclimatize to that. Ultimately, people living in Minnesota in the winter come to the San Francisco Bay Area and they think that it's t-shirt time, even though for the rest of us it's not quite. Regulating tissue growth and development. So it turns out that the thyroid hormone is actually activating a vast amount of tissues throughout the body, and you can read about that. So also maintaining blood pressure is the work of the thyroid hormone. Okay, so when the thyroid hormone is overactive, then we have this situation, the exophthalmos situation, in which the eyes are normally positioned in the orbit of the skull because of the fat cushioning that's in there. And if the fat cushioning gets metabolized and then replaced by connective tissue, then we don't have that soft padding for the eye, and instead the eye is projected forward due to the development of fibrous connective tissue. Okay, so that's one of the outcomes of too much production of thyroxine. Okay, so it's needed for many things, and we can read about that over here. There is a problem, of course, besides the calorigenic effect, which is that children are actually growing a brain. As I indicated to you before, that there's only there's only 1/3 of a brain that we're born with and 2/3 yet to grow from birth to 5 years of age. And so one of the problems that we encounter with a lack of thyroxine is the lack of vigor to actually produce the tissues that are needed for a full and complete childhood.